My name is Victor Langford, and for 30 years, people called me one of the most powerful men in the hotel industry. I own towers in Dubai, resorts in Greece, beachfront hotels in Miami, and luxury apartments in cities where ordinary people could barely afford a single night's stay. My name appeared on glass buildings, gold plaques, business magazines, and invitation-only guest lists. But before all that, before the suits, before the interviews, before people started lowering their voices when I walked into a room, I was just a hungry boy sleeping behind a bus station. That was why I built Langford Crown Hotels on one rule. No guest should ever be judged by their appearance. Not by their clothes. Not by their accent. Not by their bank balance. Not by the worst day of their life. But one Friday evening, an anonymous envelope arrived at my private office. Inside was a flash drive and one handwritten sentence. Come see what your people do when they think you are not watching. The video showed the lobby of my most prestigious hotel, the Royal Crescent, a 5-star landmark in the heart of the city. A poor-looking man walked in during heavy rain, soaked from head to toe. He asked politely for shelter, just for a few minutes. The receptionist laughed. Security dragged him outside. Guests watched like it was entertainment. Then the manager appeared. He smiled for the wealthy guests, then kicked the man's bag into the street. I watched the video 6 times. By the 7th, I was no longer angry. I was cold. The next evening, I opened an old storage box I had not touched in decades. Inside were the clothes I wore when I had nothing. Torn brown trousers, a faded coat, cracked shoes, and a wool cap with a hole near the edge. My assistant, Marina Cole, stood behind me, arms folded. "Sir, this is dangerous." I rubbed dirt across my face. "That is the point. You could send investigators. They would behave for investigators. Then send secret shoppers." I turned to her. "I don't want to know how they treat customers. I want to know how they treat someone they believe has no power." Marina went silent. At 8:15 p.m., I stepped out of my car 2 streets away from the Royal Crescent and walked through the rain like a forgotten man. Nobody bowed. Nobody smiled. Nobody opened the door. And as I entered my own hotel dressed like poverty itself, I knew one thing clearly. By sunrise, somebody's life would change forever. The rain followed me into the lobby. Water dripped from my coat onto the polished marble floor as I stepped inside the Royal Crescent. The lobby was magnificent. Crystal chandeliers hung from a ceiling 3 stories high. Fresh orchids decorated every table. Soft piano music drifted through hidden speakers. The scent of expensive perfume mixed with roasted coffee from the cafe near the elevators. Everything looked perfect. But I hadn't come to inspect the building. I had come to inspect the people. The moment I entered, conversations changed. Not stopped. Changed. Guests glanced at me and immediately looked away. A woman clutching a designer handbag pulled it closer to her chest. A businessman frowned as if my existence had offended him. 2 young men in tailored suits laughed quietly while staring in my direction. I kept walking. The reception desk was directly ahead. 3 employees stood behind it. The moment they noticed me, their smiles disappeared. One of them, a blonde receptionist named Emily Dawson, looked horrified. The kind of horrified usually reserved for discovering a dead rat in a luxury kitchen. "Can I help you?" she asked. The words were polite. The tone wasn't. "I'd like a room." Her eyes swept over my clothes, my shoes, my beard, then back to my face. "I'm afraid we're fully booked." The answer came too quickly. She hadn't checked the system. I knew because I owned it. The hotel was currently operating at 63% occupancy. There were more than 100 empty rooms. "I only need 1 night," I said. "We're full." A lie. A simple, effortless lie. Behind me, the front doors opened. A wealthy couple entered. Instantly, Emily's posture transformed. Her smile returned. Her voice softened. "Welcome to the Royal Crescent." The difference was almost theatrical. I stepped aside and watched. Within 30 seconds, she had upgraded them to a premium suite. Champagne was offered. Bags were carried. Names were remembered. Respect flowed freely. Apparently, dignity was included in the room package. I turned away from the desk and headed toward a seating area near the lobby cafe. Nobody stopped me. Nobody offered assistance. Nobody asked whether I needed anything. For nearly 20 minutes, I sat quietly observing. That was when I noticed her. A young woman carrying a tray of coffee cups. Her name tag read, Jasmine Turner. Unlike everyone else, she didn't stare. She didn't wrinkle her nose. She didn't pretend I wasn't there. She simply walked over. "Good evening, sir." "Sir." One word. Yet nobody else had used it. "Good evening." She smiled. "Are you waiting for someone?" "No. You look cold." I laughed softly. "That obvious?" "A little." She placed a paper cup in front of me. "Hot coffee." I looked up. "I didn't order this." "I know." She lowered her voice. "Neither did the hotel." I stared at her. "Why?" She shrugged. "Because everybody deserves a warm drink when it's raining." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Not because of the coffee. Because of what it represented. One employee. One simple act of kindness. One person who still remembered how to be human. Then her smile faded. She glanced toward the reception desk. Toward the security station. Toward the hotel manager's office. A shadow crossed her face. Fear. Real fear. She leaned slightly closer. "Be careful tonight." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, a sharp voice echoed across the lobby. "Jasmine." A man in an expensive navy suit was marching toward us. Tall. Perfectly groomed. Cold eyes. The kind of man who enjoyed power far too much. Jasmine immediately straightened. Her face lost all expression. The manager stopped beside her. His name tag read, Gregory Hart, General Manager. His gaze moved from Jasmine to me. Disgust flashed across his face before being hidden behind a professional smile. "Problem here?" he asked. "No, sir," Jasmine replied quickly. Gregory looked at the coffee. Then at her. Then at me. His smile became thinner. Much thinner. "I see." The way he said it made my stomach tighten. Because I recognized that tone. It was the tone bullies use when they're deciding how much damage they can get away with. Jasmine picked up her tray. "I should get back to work." She walked away quickly. Gregory watched her leave. Then he turned toward me. For several seconds, he said nothing. Just stared. Evaluating. Calculating. Judging. Finally, he spoke. "You should leave." I looked up calmly. "Why?" "This is a luxury establishment." And his smile disappeared completely. "And people like you don't belong here." For the first time that night, anger stirred inside me. Not because of the insult. Because he said it so naturally. Like he had said it 1,000 times before. And that was when I knew. The anonymous letter had been right. Something rotten was hiding inside my hotel. And before the night was over, I intended to uncover every bit of it. Gregory Hart stood over me for several seconds after telling me I didn't belong. His expensive suit looked flawless. His smile looked practiced. But his eyes revealed something else. Contempt. The kind that comes from believing some people matter more than others. I looked up at him calmly. "I haven't broken any rules." Gregory folded his arms. "You are making our guests uncomfortable." I glanced around the lobby. Nobody appeared uncomfortable. Most weren't even paying attention anymore. The only uncomfortable person seemed to be him. Am I causing trouble? No. Am I threatening anyone? No. Then what exactly is the problem? His jaw tightened. For a moment, I thought he might lose his temper. Instead, he forced another smile. "A hotel like this has standards." There it was. The language people use when they want to discriminate without admitting it. Standards. Class. Image. Presentation. Different words for the same ugly idea. I nodded slowly, then leaned back in my chair. "I'll stay a little longer." The smile vanished again. Gregory stared at me before finally walking away. But I noticed something important. Before entering his office, he looked directly at Jasmine. The look wasn't casual. It was a warning. And Jasmine immediately lowered her eyes. Fear again. The same fear I'd seen earlier. Something was happening inside this hotel. Something bigger than rude employees. An hour later, the lobby became busier. Luxury cars arrived one after another. Business executives. Celebrities. Social media influencers. People Gregory considered valuable. He greeted each one personally. Shook hands. Remembered names. Offered upgrades. Meanwhile, I sat unnoticed in the corner. Exactly where I wanted to be. Near 10 p.m., Jasmine passed by carrying fresh towels. As she moved past my chair, she quietly dropped a folded napkin beside me. She never slowed down. Never looked back. I waited until she disappeared into a hallway before picking it up. Written in hurried handwriting were 6 words. 3rd floor. Storage room. 10:15. I checked the time. 10:11. Interesting. Very interesting. At exactly 10:15, I entered the employee elevator. Nobody paid attention to me. People rarely notice those they consider beneath them. The third floor was quiet. Luxury suites lined both sides of the corridor. At the far end sat a maintenance storage room. The door was slightly open. I stepped inside. Jasmine was waiting. She looked nervous. More nervous than before. The moment she saw me, she locked the door. Then she checked it twice. "What is this about?" I asked. She took a deep breath. "You need to leave." I frowned. "Why?" "Because Gregory is planning something." My expression remained calm. "What kind of something?" She hesitated, clearly debating whether she should continue. Finally she spoke. "You're not the first poor person who came here." I said nothing. "Last month an elderly veteran came into the hotel lobby during a storm." Her voice trembled. "He only wanted somewhere warm to sit." "What happened?" "Gregory ordered security to remove him." I felt anger building. "What else?" Jasmine looked away. "One guard pushed him down the front steps." The room fell silent. "What happened to the man?" "He broke his wrist." My hands tightened. "Did anyone report it?" She laughed bitterly. "To who?" "Good question. Who reports corruption when corruption runs the building?" Jasmine continued. "Gregory has everyone terrified." "How?" "He fires people who speak up." Her voice lowered further. "He alters reports. Changes records. Blames employees for things they didn't do." "Why hasn't corporate heard about this?" She stared at me. "You really don't know?" "Know what?" "The complaints never reach corporate." A cold feeling settled in my stomach. "Explain." "Gregory reviews everything first." Now things were starting to make sense. Anonymous complaints. Missing reports. Employee turnover. Declining customer satisfaction. For months I had seen strange numbers. Nothing large enough to trigger alarms, but enough to suggest something wasn't right. Jasmine reached into her pocket. Then she handed me a flash drive. I looked at it. "What is this?" Her hands were shaking. "Evidence." "What kind of evidence?" "Guest complaints that disappeared." I stared at her. "How many?" "Dozens." My pulse quickened. "Anything else?" She nodded. "Employee reports." "About Gregory?" "About Gregory." This was bigger than I expected. Much bigger. The anonymous letter hadn't been exaggerating. Someone had built an entire system designed to protect abuse. And Gregory wasn't acting alone. No manager could hide this much without help. Somewhere above him or around him, others were involved. Jasmine suddenly grabbed my arm. "Listen carefully." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "If Gregory discovers I gave you that drive, I'm finished." I studied her face. She wasn't worried about losing her job. She looked terrified. "What are you not telling me?" For a moment she said nothing. Then she whispered 4 words that changed everything. "Someone already disappeared." I stared at her. "What?" "There was another employee." My heartbeat slowed. Dangerously slow. "What happened?" He started asking questions. "And no one has seen him since." The room became very quiet. Outside, a distant elevator bell echoed through the hallway. Jasmine's face had turned pale. "He warned me before he left." "What did he say?" Her eyes filled with fear. "He said Gregory wasn't the real problem." A chill ran through me. Because if Gregory wasn't the real problem, then tonight was about to become far more dangerous than I ever imagined. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. The storage room suddenly felt smaller, colder, more dangerous. I looked at Jasmine carefully. "Tell me about the employee." She swallowed. "His name was Marcus Reed." "How long did he work here?" "Almost 4 years." "What was his position?" "Night auditor." That got my attention immediately. Night auditors see everything. Financial records, guest logs, security reports, maintenance requests, internal communications. If someone wanted to uncover corruption inside a hotel, that was exactly the position they'd need. "What did Marcus discover?" I asked. Jasmine glanced nervously toward the door. "I don't know everything." "Tell me what you do know." She took a deep breath. "He started noticing strange charges." "Strange how?" "Guests were being billed for services they never used." I frowned. Could have been a mistake. That's what he thought. And then, he kept finding more. My stomach tightened. Marcus hadn't disappeared because of one error. He'd disappeared because he'd found a pattern. "A few $100s here," Jasmine continued. "1,000 there." She shook her head. Small amounts that most wealthy guests would never notice. I understood immediately. Tiny thefts spread across hundreds of transactions. almost invisible, until someone added them together. How much? I asked. Jasmine looked down. The last number Marcus mentioned was over $2 million. The room went silent. 2 million. That wasn't corruption. That was organized theft. And it had been happening inside my company. Inside my hotel. Under my name. When was the last time anyone saw him? 6 months ago. What happened? He came to work one Friday. And he never came back. I stared at her. No resignation? She shook her head. No notice. No goodbye. Nothing. The fear in her eyes was real. Not imagined. Not exaggerated. Real. Then something occurred to me. What did Gregory say? He told everyone Marcus quit. And people believed him? Jasmine laughed bitterly. Nobody wanted to ask questions. Because questions are dangerous when fear controls a workplace. I knew that. I had lived it. Years ago, when I was sleeping in shelters and working odd jobs, I learned that frightened people often stay silent. Not because they don't care. Because survival comes first. A sudden noise echoed outside the storage room. Footsteps. Jasmine immediately froze. The color drained from her face. Someone stopped outside the door. Neither of us breathed. The handle moved slightly, then stopped. A few seconds later, the footsteps continued down the corridor. Jasmine exhaled shakily. They're watching. Who? I don't know. The answer bothered me more than if she had named someone. Unknown enemies are always more dangerous. I slipped the flash drive into my coat pocket. Thank you. Her eyes widened. That's it. For now. You don't understand. I understand enough. No. She shook her head. You really don't. Before I could respond, she pulled another folded paper from her pocket. This one looked old. Very old. The edges were worn. Creased. Handled many times. She handed it to me. Marcus gave me that 3 days before he disappeared. I unfolded it. The message contained only one sentence. If anything happens to me, check the executive suites. I read it twice. Then a third time. Executive suites. Not offices. Not accounts. Not storage rooms. Executive suites. Rooms reserved for VIP guests. Wealthy investors. Politicians. Corporate partners. Important people. The kind of people who preferred privacy. Interesting. Very interesting. I folded the note and slipped it into my pocket. What room numbers? Jasmine blinked. What? The executive suites. There are 12. Good. That narrowed things down. A loud voice suddenly echoed from somewhere down the hallway. Jasmine. Her face went pale again. Gregory. Even from a distance, I recognized the voice. The call came again. Closer this time. Jasmine. She grabbed my arm. You need to leave. I'm not finished. You're if you want to stay alive. I studied her expression. She wasn't being dramatic. She genuinely believed someone could get hurt. Maybe worse. Then she said something that changed everything. Marcus wasn't the only one. My eyes narrowed. What do you mean? There were others. Others. She nodded. 3 employees. My pulse quickened. Where are they now? Gone. Fired. No. Transferred. No. Then what happened? Her voice became barely audible. They all disappeared after reporting problems. The hallway suddenly felt very quiet. Too quiet. For people. Not 1. 4. That wasn't coincidence. That was a pattern. And patterns always leave evidence. Gregory's footsteps were approaching now. Fast. Determined. Jasmine moved toward the door. You have to go. What about you? She smiled sadly. I'll survive. But something in her eyes told me she wasn't sure. As she unlocked the door, I made a silent promise. I hadn't come here expecting a simple case of discrimination. I hadn't come here expecting fraud. And I definitely hadn't come here expecting missing employees. But now I was involved. And when I become involved in something, I finish it. No matter who stands in the way. No matter how powerful they think they are. As I stepped back into the hallway, I saw Gregory at the far end. His eyes immediately locked onto me. Then onto Jasmine. His smile appeared. But there was nothing friendly about it. For the first time that night, Gregory Hart looked nervous. And that told me one thing. He knew the truth was getting closer. The moment Gregory saw me standing near Jasmine, his expression changed. Only for a second. Most people wouldn't have noticed it. I did. Because powerful men always reveal themselves in the moments they think nobody is watching. His smile remained in place. But his eyes hardened. Calculating. Suspicious. Dangerous. Everything all right here? Gregory asked as he approached. Jasmine immediately straightened. Yes, sir. Gregory looked at her. Then at me. Then back at her. The silence lingered just a little too long. Why aren't you working? He asked. I was delivering supplies. To a storage room? Jasmine opened her mouth. Nothing came out. Gregory smiled. The smile of a predator who knew he'd found weakness. I'll speak with you later. Her face fell instantly. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. Pure fear. Gregory turned toward me. And you? I remained calm. Me? This floor is restricted. I got lost. No. He smiled again. I don't think you did. For a moment neither of us spoke. It felt less like a conversation and more like a chess match, each waiting for the other to make a mistake. Finally he stepped aside. The elevators are that way. I nodded politely, then walked toward them. But as the doors closed, I caught him watching me. Not casually. Intently. Like he was trying to figure something out. Good. Let him wonder. Because while Gregory was trying to understand me, I was already moving 3 steps ahead. Back in the lobby, I settled into the same chair as before. A wealthy businessman was checking in. 2 celebrities were taking photos near the staircase. A luxury car service arrived outside. Everything looked normal. Perfect. Elegant. Successful. But now I knew the truth. Underneath the polished surface, something rotten was spreading. I checked the time. 11:42 p.m. Most guests would soon retire to their rooms. Most staff would become less vigilant. And that meant it was time to investigate the executive suites. The note from Marcus echoed in my mind. If anything happens to me, check the executive suites. Why there? Why not the offices? Why not accounting? Why not security? What was hidden inside those rooms? At 12:15 a.m., the opportunity arrived. A large wedding party entered the hotel. The lobby became chaotic. Staff rushed everywhere. Bellhops carried luggage. Receptionists handled check-ins. Security focused on crowd control. Nobody paid attention to a poor-looking man walking toward the elevators. I entered alone, pressed the button for the top floor, and waited. The executive level occupied the entire 22nd floor. Only 12 suites, each larger than most apartments, each capable of generating thousands of dollars per night. The elevator doors opened. The corridor was silent, luxurious, private, a place designed for people who never wanted to hear the word no. I walked slowly, studying every door, every camera, every emergency exit, everything. Most suites were occupied. I could hear televisions, conversations, music, but one suite stood out. Suite 2208. Dark, silent, empty, at least on the surface. As I approached, something caught my eye. The lock, recently replaced. Interesting. Very interesting. I crouched slightly, examining the frame. Tiny scratches. Fresh scratches. The kind left by repeated access. Not by guests. By staff. A lot of staff. My pulse quickened. This was it. I could feel it. The room Marcus wanted someone to find. The room nobody was supposed to question. Then I heard footsteps. Fast. Approaching. I immediately stepped away from the door. A housekeeper turned the corner pushing a cart. She froze when she saw me. Sir. I smiled politely. Wrong floor. Relief flooded her face. Guest elevators are downstairs. Thank you. She continued past me. But before disappearing, she glanced nervously toward suite 2208. Just for a second. Yet it was enough. She knew something. Maybe not everything, but something. I waited until she vanished around the corner, then returned to the suite. This time I noticed another detail. The room wasn't entirely dark. A faint glow leaked from beneath the door. Not enough for a guest. Enough for hidden equipment, or hidden records, or hidden people. My heart began beating faster. Someone was inside. At midnight. In a suite that supposedly wasn't occupied. Then I heard it. A voice. Muffled. Faint. Coming from inside. I moved closer. Listening carefully. Another voice answered. A second person. Then a third. A meeting. A secret meeting. Taking place in one of my executive suites. At nearly midnight. My instincts screamed that I had finally found the center of the operation. But before I could listen further, a hand landed heavily on my shoulder. I turned instantly. A large security guard stood behind me. Not one I'd seen downstairs. This man looked different. More aggressive. More dangerous. His expression was cold. "Can I help you?" he asked. The words sounded polite. The tone did not. I smiled. I got lost. His eyes narrowed. "No." He glanced at Suite 2208. Then back at me. "I don't think you did." The exact same words Gregory had used earlier. That wasn't a coincidence. That was training. A script. Something they had rehearsed before. The guard took one step closer. "You need to come with me." My pulse slowed. Not from fear. From certainty. Because the moment he said those words, I knew I was getting close enough to make them nervous. And nervous people make mistakes. Big mistakes. The kind that bring entire empires crashing down. Scene 6. The room behind the lies. The security guard's hand tightened around my shoulder. "You need to come with me." His voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that hides something ugly underneath. I looked at him. Then at Suite 2208. Then back at him. "What happens if I don't?" His jaw tightened. "You don't want to find out." There it was. Not a request. A threat. The hallway suddenly felt very quiet. No guests. No housekeepers. No witnesses. Just me, the guard, and the door that someone desperately wanted hidden. I slowly raised my hands. "All right." The guard relaxed slightly. Big mistake. As we started walking toward the elevator, I deliberately stumbled. The guard instinctively grabbed my arm to steady me. For a split second his attention shifted. And in that split second, I slipped a tiny recording device from my coat and dropped it beneath a decorative table near Suite 2208. It was no larger than a coin. Invisible unless someone knew where to look. Then I continued walking. The guard escorted me downstairs and out through a side exit. The moment the door closed behind me, he spoke. "If you come back, you'll be arrested for trespassing." I laughed. "Trespassing? This is private property." If only he knew. I nodded politely. "Understood." Then I walked away into the night. The guard watched until I disappeared around the corner. What he didn't know was that I wasn't leaving. Not really. 20 minutes later, I entered the black SUV parked across the street. Marina was waiting. The moment she saw me, she sighed with relief. "Thank God." I removed my wet cap. "Did you get everything?" She handed me a tablet. "Audio and video from your body recorder." "Good. Very good." Then I told her about Suite 2208, the missing employees, the secret meetings, the hidden complaints, the fraudulent charges, the threats, the fear. Her expression grew darker with every sentence. Finally, she shook her head. "This is worse than we thought." I nodded. "Much worse." Then I pointed toward the tablet. "Connect to the recorder I dropped upstairs." Within seconds, the device activated. Static filled the vehicle. Then voices emerged. 3 voices. Male. Calm. Businesslike. The meeting inside Suite 2208 had continued. Marina increased the volume. We listened. For several minutes, nothing seemed unusual. Numbers. Invoices. Schedules. Then one sentence changed everything. "Move the money before the audit." Marina froze. I felt my stomach tighten. There it was. Proof. Not suspicion. Not theory. Proof. Another voice spoke. "What about headquarters?" The first man laughed. "They'll never see it." The third voice joined in. "They haven't seen it for 5 years. 5 years. 5 years." I closed my eyes briefly. This wasn't a hotel problem anymore. This wasn't even a management problem. This was organized criminal activity. Inside my company. Using my business as cover. Then a familiar voice entered the conversation. "Gregory." I'd recognize it anywhere. "We still have an issue with employee reports." The room became quiet. Someone asked, "Which reports?" "The complaints." A pause. Then another voice replied, "Destroy them." My hands clenched. Marina stared at the screen. Neither of us spoke. We simply listened. The conversation continued. Guests being overcharged. Records altered. Employees intimidated. Financial statements manipulated. Everything Jasmine had described was true. And it was bigger than Gregory. Much bigger. Then came the moment that made the blood drain from my face. A man spoke a name. A name I knew very well. A name that should never have been connected to any of this. Charles Whitmore. I sat upright immediately. Marina looked at me. "No." I nodded slowly. "Yes. Charles Whitmore. Regional Vice President. One of the highest-ranking executives in my entire organization. A man I had trusted for nearly 12 years. A man who attended board meetings, charity events, corporate retreats. A man who publicly preached ethics and accountability. And according to the recording, he was involved. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. Because if Charles was involved, then everything changed. This wasn't local corruption. This was corporate corruption. And that meant there were probably others. The recording continued. A few minutes later, another sentence emerged. One that made my heart stop completely. What happened to Marcus won't happen again. Silence filled the SUV. Absolute silence. I looked at Marina. She looked at me. Neither of us needed to say it. They weren't talking about an employee who quit. They were talking about Marcus Reed, the missing auditor, the man who vanished 6 months ago. Someone inside that room knew exactly what happened to him. Maybe all of them did. And suddenly this investigation was no longer about money. It was about a missing man. Maybe worse. I stared through the windshield at the glowing hotel across the street. For years I had believed the Royal Crescent was one of the crown jewels of my company. Tonight I discovered it was something else entirely. A crime scene. And somewhere inside it were people willing to threaten employees, destroy evidence, steal millions, and possibly silence anyone who got too close to the truth. Marina finally broke the silence. What do we do now? I looked back at the hotel, then at the recording, then at the growing stack of evidence. And for the first time that night, I smiled. Because they still thought they were hunting a homeless man. They had no idea they had just declared war on the owner of the entire empire. By sunrise, I had barely slept. The recording from Suite 2208 had changed everything. What started as an investigation into discrimination had become something far larger. Fraud, conspiracy, a missing employee, and possibly worse. Yet one question continued to bother me. Why had Jasmine taken such a risk? Most people would have stayed quiet. Most people would have protected themselves. She hadn't. And people rarely risk everything without a reason. At 8:30 that morning, I returned to the Royal Crescent. Still disguised. Still ignored. Still invisible. The lobby was quieter than the night before. Business travelers checked out. Housekeepers moved between elevators. The cafe served breakfast to guests who would never know the war unfolding around them. I spotted Jasmine near reception. The moment she saw me, relief flashed across her face. Then fear replaced it. She quickly looked away. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I sat near the cafe and watched. 10 minutes later, Gregory emerged from his office. His expression was unusually cheerful. That immediately made me suspicious. Gregory wasn't the kind of man who smiled without a reason. He walked directly toward Jasmine. Several employees glanced up, then quickly looked away. Everyone sensed something. Gregory stopped in front of her. Jasmine Turner. She straightened. Yes, sir? His smile widened. I need to see you in my office. The entire reception area became silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I recognized that kind of silence. The silence that comes before bad news. Jasmine followed him. Her shoulders stiff. Her hands trembling slightly. The office door closed behind them. I checked the time. Then waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. 40. Finally the door opened. Jasmine stepped out. Her face was pale. She looked like someone trying very hard not to cry. Gregory remained inside his office smiling. Smiling. That told me everything. Jasmine walked quickly toward the employee corridor. I followed several minutes later. I found her in a supply room. Alone. Sitting on a stack of folded towels. Tears streamed down her face. She wiped them away immediately when she saw me. I'm fine. It was the kind of lie people tell when they're falling apart. What happened? She laughed bitterly. I got promoted. I frowned. Promoted. That's what he called it. Something about her tone made my stomach tighten. What does that mean? She stared at the floor. They transferred me. Where? A hotel in Alaska. I blinked. What? I live here. Her voice cracked. My mother lives here. She swallowed hard. My little brother lives here. Now I understood. It wasn't a promotion. It was exile. A punishment disguised as an opportunity. A way to remove a problem without creating suspicion. When do you leave? Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Gregory wasn't wasting time. He was cleaning house. Removing witnesses. Removing risks. Removing anyone who knew too much. Exactly like Marcus. Exactly like the others. A terrible thought struck me. What happened after Marcus started asking questions? Her eyes widened. He got transferred first. There it was. The pattern. Transfer. Isolation. Disappearance. My jaw tightened. Gregory wasn't improvising. This was a system. A process. A method. And it had worked before. Then Jasmine said something that made my blood run cold. He knows about you. The room suddenly felt smaller. What? He asked about you. When? This morning. What did he ask? She hesitated, then answered. He wanted to know why I kept talking to the homeless man. Interesting. Very interesting. Because Gregory wasn't worried about appearances anymore. He was worried about me. That meant he suspected something. Not everything, but enough. He sat beside her. Jasmine. She looked up. What? Do you trust me? She laughed softly. No. Fair answer. Then she sighed. But I trust you more than them. Good enough. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. Not my personal card. Not yet. A secure number. One that connected directly to Marina. If anything happens today, call that number. She stared at it. Who are you? I smiled. Someone who intends to finish this. She studied my face for several seconds. Then nodded. A loud knock suddenly echoed through the supply room door. Both of us froze. Another knock. Harder this time. Jasmine. Gregory. Her face drained of color. The smile vanished from mine. Because Gregory wasn't supposed to know she was here. The door handle moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Then stopped. For several seconds nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Finally Gregory's voice came through the door. Cold. Calm. Dangerous. I know you're in there. Jasmine's hands began shaking. The handle turned again. This time harder. Then Gregory spoke 6 words that sent a chill through the room. We need to discuss Marcus Reed. The blood drained from Jasmine's face. And for the first time since this investigation began, I realized we might be running out of time. By sunrise, I had barely slept. The recording from Suite 2208 had changed everything. What started as an investigation into discrimination had become something far larger. Fraud, conspiracy, a missing employee, and possibly worse. Yet one question continued to bother me. Why had Jasmine taken such a risk? Most people would have stayed quiet. Most people would have protected themselves. She hadn't. And people rarely risk everything without a reason. At 8:30 that morning, I returned to the Royal Crescent. Still disguised. Still ignored. Still invisible. The lobby was quieter than the night before. Business travelers checked out. Housekeepers moved between elevators. The cafe served breakfast to guests who would never know the war unfolding around them. I spotted Jasmine near reception. The moment she saw me, relief flashed across her face. Then fear replaced it. She quickly looked away. Something was wrong. Very wrong. I sat near the cafe and watched. 10 minutes later, Gregory emerged from his office. His expression was unusually cheerful. That immediately made me suspicious. Gregory wasn't the kind of man who smiled without a reason. He walked directly toward Jasmine. Several employees glanced up, then quickly looked away. Everyone sensed something. Gregory stopped in front of her. Jasmine Turner. She straightened. Yes, sir? His smile widened. I need to see you in my office. The entire reception area became silent. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. I recognized that kind of silence. The silence that comes before bad news. Jasmine followed him. Her shoulders stiff. Her hands trembling slightly. The office door closed behind them. I checked the time. Then waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. 40. Finally the door opened. Jasmine stepped out. Her face was pale. She looked like someone trying very hard not to cry. Gregory remained inside his office smiling. Smiling. That told me everything. Jasmine walked quickly toward the employee corridor. I followed several minutes later. I found her in a supply room. Alone. Sitting on a stack of folded towels. Tears streamed down her face. She wiped them away immediately when she saw me. I'm fine. It was the kind of lie people tell when they're falling apart. What happened? She laughed bitterly. I got promoted. I frowned. Promoted. That's what he called it. Something about her tone made my stomach tighten. What does that mean? She stared at the floor. They transferred me. Where? A hotel in Alaska. I blinked. What? I live here. Her voice cracked. My mother lives here. She swallowed hard. My little brother lives here. Now I understood. It wasn't a promotion. It was exile. A punishment disguised as an opportunity. A way to remove a problem without creating suspicion. When do you leave? Tomorrow. Tomorrow. Gregory wasn't wasting time. He was cleaning house, removing witnesses, removing risks, removing anyone who knew too much. Exactly like Marcus. Exactly like the others. A terrible thought struck me. What happened after Marcus started asking questions? Her eyes widened. He got transferred first. There it was. The pattern. Transfer. Isolation. Disappearance. My jaw tightened. Gregory wasn't improvising. This was a system, a process, a method, and it had worked before. Then Jasmine said something that made my blood run cold. He knows about you. The room suddenly felt smaller. What? He asked about you. When? This morning. What did he ask? She hesitated, then answered. He wanted to know why I kept talking to the homeless man. Interesting. Very interesting. Because Gregory wasn't worried about appearances anymore. He was worried about me. That meant he suspected something. Not everything, but enough. He sat beside her. Jasmine. She looked up. What? Do you trust me? She laughed softly. No. Fair answer. Then she sighed. But I trust you more than them. Good enough. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a business card. Not my personal card. Not yet. A secure number. One that connected directly to Marina. If anything happens today, call that number. She stared at it. Who are you? I smiled. Someone who intends to finish this. She studied my face for several seconds, then nodded. A loud knock suddenly echoed through the supply room door. Both of us froze. Another knock. Harder this time. Jasmine. Gregory. Her face drained of color. The smile vanished from mine. Because Gregory wasn't supposed to know she was here. The door handle moved. Slowly. Deliberately. Then stopped. For several seconds nobody spoke. Nobody breathed. Finally Gregory's voice came through the door. Cold. Calm. Dangerous. I know you're in there. Jasmine's hands began shaking. The handle turned again. This time harder. Then Gregory spoke 6 words that sent a chill through the room. We need to discuss Marcus Reed. The blood drained from Jasmine's face. And for the first time since this investigation began, I realized we might be running out of time. The moment Gregory mentioned Marcus Reed's name, Jasmine looked like she had seen a ghost. Her breathing became shallow. Her hands trembled. And for the first time since I had met her, I saw genuine panic. Not fear of losing a job. Fear of something much worse. The supply room remained silent. Gregory stood outside, waiting, listening. The handle moved again. Slowly, patiently, like a hunter certain his prey had nowhere left to run. Then his voice came through the door once more. Jasmine opened the door. Neither of us moved. Now, I looked at her. She looked at me. And in that moment I made a decision. The game was over. I had enough evidence. Enough recordings. Enough witnesses. Enough lies. It was time to stop hiding. I stood up. Jasmine's eyes widened. What are you doing? Ending this. Before she could respond, I walked to the door and unlocked it. Gregory's confident expression appeared immediately. Then he saw me. For a split second, surprise flashed across his face. Then suspicion. Then anger. What are you doing here? He demanded. I smiled, looking for answers. His eyes narrowed. You need to leave. No. The word landed heavily between us. Gregory stared. Something about my voice had changed. The homeless man he thought he controlled was gone. And he could feel it. We need to speak with Jasmine privately. No, I repeated. The smile disappeared from his face. This is employee business. I stepped closer. And Marcus Reed. The color drained slightly from his face. Not much. Just enough. But enough was all I needed. For the first time since we'd met, Gregory looked nervous. What about him? I think you know. The corridor fell silent. Employees nearby had begun noticing the confrontation. A housekeeper stopped pushing her cart. 2 receptionists stared from down the hallway. People sensed something important was happening. Gregory straightened his tie, then forced a smile. Sir, I don't know what fantasy you've created in your head, but Marcus quit. Really? Yes. I nodded slowly, then reached into my pocket and pressed a button. A voice immediately echoed through the hallway. Gregory's voice, recorded from Suite 2208. What happened to Marcus won't happen again. The corridor froze. Absolutely froze. Every employee within earshot turned toward us. Gregory's face went white. The recording continued. Destroy the complaints. Another voice followed. Move the money before the audit. The silence became deafening. Gregory lunged toward me. Turn that off. Too late. The damage was done. Doors were opening. Employees were emerging from offices. Guests were staring. Security guards were approaching. And every single person was listening. I smiled calmly, then made a call. A very important call. Bring them in. 3 simple words. Nothing more. Nothing less. Less than 60 seconds later, the front doors of the Royal Crescent opened. The lobby erupted into confusion. People turned, whispered, pointed. A group of individuals entered together. Lawyers, private investigators, corporate auditors. And behind them, Marina, wearing her usual dark suit, carrying a folder thick enough to end careers. Gregory immediately understood. His face lost all color. Marina walked directly toward me, without hesitation, without uncertainty. Then she spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to introduce Victor Langford. The hotel went silent. A silence unlike anything I had ever experienced. Employees froze. Guests stared. Security stopped moving. Even Gregory looked unable to breathe. I removed the old cap, then the fake beard. The room gasped collectively, because suddenly the homeless man disappeared, and the owner of the entire Langford Crown Empire stood in his place. Several employees nearly dropped what they were holding. One receptionist covered her mouth. A guest whispered, "Oh my God." Gregory looked like he might collapse. "No." His voice cracked. "No." I stepped forward. "Yes." The lawyers surrounded us. The auditors began moving immediately, collecting computers, securing records, restricting access to offices. Everything had already been prepared. Gregory looked around desperately, searching for an escape. There wasn't one. Then I spoke the words he'd never expected to hear. "Gregory Hart." His eyes locked onto mine. "You are terminated effective immediately." His mouth opened. No words came out. I continued. "You are under investigation for fraud, destruction of evidence, employee intimidation, and conspiracy." Employees exchanged stunned looks. Some appeared shocked. Others looked relieved, as if a weight they had carried for years had suddenly disappeared. Then came the final blow, the one that shattered him completely. "We have enough evidence to refer this matter for criminal prosecution." Gregory staggered backward. His knees nearly buckled. The confident manager, the powerful bully, the man who terrorized employees. Gone, replaced by a frightened man watching his empire burn. And this was only the beginning, because Gregory wasn't the highest-ranking name on the list. Not even close. The people above him still had no idea what was coming, but they were about to find out. And when they did, the entire corporation would shake. Gregory Hart was escorted from the hotel just after noon. Not by security, by investigators. The same employees he had spent years intimidating stood silently in the lobby and watched him leave. No one applauded. No one cheered. They simply watched. Because sometimes justice is so unexpected that people don't know how to react when it finally arrives. I stood near the reception desk as Gregory disappeared through the revolving doors. For a moment, I thought the worst was over. I was wrong. Very wrong. Marina approached carrying a laptop and 3 thick folders. Her expression told me everything. "We found more." I sighed. "How much more?" She handed me the first folder. The number on the front made my stomach tighten. $18.7 million. I stared at it. "What is this?" "Estimated losses." I looked up. "From Gregory?" "No." The answer landed like a stone. "No." Marina shook her head. "From the entire network." The lobby suddenly felt colder. I had expected corruption. I had expected fraud. But not on this scale. Not across multiple properties. Not involving nearly $19 million. A knot formed in my chest. "Show me." We moved into a private conference room. Within minutes, lawyers, auditors, and investigators joined us. The atmosphere was tense. Nobody smiled. Nobody celebrated. Because everyone understood what the numbers meant. This wasn't one bad manager. This was a system. The lead auditor opened a presentation. A map appeared on the screen. Several Langford Crown properties were highlighted in red. Not 1. Not 2. 7. 7 hotels. 7 separate locations. All connected. All involved. The room fell silent. Then the auditor pointed to a name. Charles Whitmore. exactly as the recording had suggested. Regional Vice President. 12 years with the company. Trusted. Respected. Powerful. The man I had defended countless times during board meetings. The man who attended charity galas and spoke about corporate ethics. The man who had shaken my hand hundreds of times. I stared at his photograph. The feeling wasn't anger. Not yet. It was disappointment. The kind that cuts deeper than rage. How involved is he? The auditor took a breath. Very. Another folder slid across the table. Inside were emails, financial records, authorization signatures, approvals, transfers. Every page tightened the knot in my chest. Charles wasn't following orders. He was giving them. The operation flowed through him. He wasn't a participant. He was an architect. Then another name appeared. And another. And another. By the end of the presentation, 6 senior executives had been implicated. 6. People I knew. People I trusted. People who sat beside me in meetings and spoke about integrity while stealing from guests and destroying lives. I rubbed my forehead. Do we have enough? The lead investigator nodded. More than enough. Then why do I feel like we're still missing something? Nobody answered. Because everyone felt it. Marcus Reed. The missing auditor. The question hanging over everything. Fraud explained the money. Corruption explained the intimidation. But it didn't explain Marcus. Not completely. The investigator opened another file. This one was thinner. Much thinner. And somehow that made it more frightening. Victor. I looked up. We found this in Gregory's office. He placed a document in front of me. I immediately recognized the name at the top. Marcus Reed. My pulse quickened. The document wasn't a resignation letter. It wasn't a transfer request. It wasn't an employee evaluation. It was a security report. And according to the report, Marcus had accessed suite 2208 3 days before he vanished. The same suite. The same room. The same place where we recorded the meeting. I leaned forward. What happened after that? The investigator's expression darkened. That's the problem. What problem? There are no records. No records. He nodded. Someone deleted them. The room became silent. Again. Always silence whenever Marcus appeared. As if the truth itself didn't want to be found. Then Marina suddenly looked up from her laptop. Her eyes widened. Wait. Everyone turned toward her. What is it? I asked. She spun the screen around. A photograph appeared. Black and white. Taken from an old security archive. My heart skipped a beat. The image showed Marcus Reed entering suite 2208. But he wasn't alone. Someone was walking beside him. Someone whose face had been partially obscured until now. Marina enhanced the image. The room collectively inhaled. Because the second face belonged to someone nobody expected. Not Gregory. Not Charles. Not an executive. Not a manager. It was Jasmine. The room fell silent. Complete silence. I stared at the photograph. Then at Marina. Then back at the screen. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Jasmine had risked everything to help us. She had exposed Gregory. She had handed over evidence. She had nearly lost her career. Yet there she was. Standing beside Marcus Reed 3 days before he disappeared. For the first time since this began, uncertainty crept into my mind. Had Jasmine been helping us? Or had she been helping herself? And if she knew Marcus, then what else wasn't she telling us?